Men complete suicides more than women, but women attempt suicides. Now, let's go to the causes of suicide. First, we have interpersonal and relationship problems, which is interpersonal conflict in romantic relationships. This means that conflict within romantic relationships was repeatedly highlighted as a reason behind suicidal behavior. Breakups would result in feeling betrayal, loneliness, and a sense of abandonment. Emotional distress results from violence and abuse was also mentioned as a reason for suicidal behavior. Number 2 cause is unmet personal and societal expectations. This is a reason specifically affecting the youth. Specifically affecting the youth was parents and caregivers' high and unrealistic schools performance expectation. The youth would end up frustrated from these expectations. If the performance failed to measure up, the youth's distress would make them consider suicide as an escape from pressured and stressful environment. Thirdly is the loss of loved ones. The feeling of grief from the death of loved one, as mentioned, contributes reasons to consider suicide. This risk was perceived even higher if the loved one died as a result of suicide. Fourth cause of suicide is financial and economic difficulties, that is loss of income. Termination of a source of income from employment or a business, for instance, following a business collapse, was provided as a reason contributing to suicidal behavior. Feeling of shame and guilt following the loss of income, especially affecting men as they perceived to be the primary source of income. Retirement was perceived to contribute to suicidality because of the lack of steady income and bringing about a sense of worthlessness, particularly in a professional who often highly defined by their work identity. Fifth is unemployment. Lack of job and therefore a source of income was commonly mentioned as a reason for some contemplating suicidality. Persons with a higher level of education who are unable to secure jobs would end up frustrated as they were forced to be dependent on others. They felt guilty for not being supportive at home, where scarce resources, were used to educate them. Closely related to the state of unemployment and affecting the older age group is the issue of retirement. Sixth is the debt trap. The debt trap. This is reported in the interviews I interviewed was that some individuals who are incapable of paying debts would feel trapped in accumulating debts and would contemplate suicide as a way of escaping the distress from the debt trap. A seventh, mental health conditions, that is depression and other mental illness. Depression was mentioned often as a common last pathway following the other life events, such as a job loss, bereavement, and substance use. Person with mental health conditions presenting with psychotic features were perceived to undergo a lot of stigma and discrimination. which in itself contributes to individuals' motivation to attempt suicide. Eighth cause is a substance use problem. Participants whom I met highlighted that substance use was a common problem in the area where I was interviewing, with the heroin using being the special concern because of its highly addictive nature. Illicit drug use especially affected the youth. Drug-dependent persons would resort to stealing and selling items from their homes, leading to family discord and eventually homelessness. The desperation to fuel the drug habit and make ends meet would often increase the risk of such individuals. Involvement with sex work, thereby increasing the risk of contracting HIV and other infectious illnesses. This vicious cycle of addiction will leave the individual highly distressed, feeling abandoned, guilty, worthless, and hopeless, and likely eventually complete suicide. The last cause, though I know there are many, description regarding sexual orientation. You find that religious and cultural beliefs in the area prohibited and condemn same-gender relationships. Persons in the same-gender relationships often live a life of secrecy, and many are cast out from their families. The shame and loneliness from this abandonment was reportedly to contribute to suicidal behavior. I interviewed a person, an imam of an age 50 years, and he said this, like for us Muslims, the issue of the same-sex relationships is a very bad issue. It is better to commit fornication as it is not viewed as a bad as sodomization, and if this happens to the person, it can make them lose hope and even be isolated by other community members. Such persons will have been mentally killed, and even his peers will isolate them. So that was an imam who actually I talked to him and interviewed about suicide. Therefore, lastly, allow me to go straight to the causes of suicidal red flags. Suicidal red flags, I say that this refers to warning signs or behaviors that suggest a person may be to risk of attempting suicide. The following are red flags. 1, talking about not wanting to live anymore or feeling hopeless. 2, talking about feeling trapped or in unbearable pain. 3, and third, talking about being a burden to others actually. 4, giving away possessions or saying goodbye to loved ones. These are the red flags. And then the 5th point is increased use of drugs or alcohol. It's really a red flag. Next is increased use of drugs or alcohol. Then next, expressing feelings of worthlessness or guilt. You find many people, they express their feelings, they feel like they are worthless, and that guilt affects them. The 7th point, withdraw from friends or family. Those are the red flags. Another one, expressing thoughts of revenge or seeking revenge on others. When you find a person expresses the thoughts of revenge or seeking revenge, that one is a sign or a red flag of being suicidal. Our second last point is the loss of interest in activities previously enjoyed. You'll find someone always enjoying some activities, and you find this person fails to enjoy, this might be the red flag of being suicidal. Lastly, sleeping too much or too little, that also affects sleeping too much or too little. I know the list is long, but I was able to come up with the 10. So therefore, as I conclude, it is important to remember that these warning signs do not always signal an impending suicide attempt. However, if you or someone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts or feeling, it is essential to seek professional help and talk to someone. Therefore, suicide is a preventable tragedy, and therefore is support available for anyone who may be struggling with suicidal thoughts or behavior. I thank you. I think I was that short, and let me end from there. Karibu, welcome, the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evans, for taking us through the overview of suicide, the causes of suicide, and the red flags. And I hope we've come to a level where we can be able to understand the causes of suicide, and we can be able to tell the red flags of someone who is having suicidal ideation. So thank you so much for keeping time. Allow me now to bring in the second speaker. The second speaker is Director HK Sai. She will be telling us the profile of the organization and what she does as a director of the organization. And the speaker will pick up from the red flags in case our first speaker may have left out any red flag. She can be able to add, and then she will move to interventions. Once we have identified maybe our colleague, our brother, our sister, our relative, our neighbor has these red flags, how can you intervene as a person? Even if you are not a psychologist, you are not a counselor, how can you intervene? Remember, we are at a level where each and everybody should be in a position of intervening once someone has the red flags. So she will talk about the intervention, and then she'll also give us some lived experiences, because she has been working with girls and boys, and therefore she has some lived experiences, so she'll also be sharing with us. So allow me to bring in Melvin Ouyo as our second speaker. Feel most welcome, Melvin.
Thank you so much, moderator. Good evening, everyone. My apologies, I got stuck in traffic, Cassie. But I'm glad that we are here today to speak about a mental health issue, and specifically to celebrate or to commemorate the World Suicide Month. Thank you so much, the first speaker, for that comprehensive introduction of what mental health is. So maybe, I don't know how much you did while I was not in yet, but I just want to say that my name is Melvin Oyo, and I'm the founder of Hope for Kenya Slum Adolescents Initiative. We work with young people in the informal settings of Kisumu, Eldoret, Nairobi, and Mombasa, even though I know that we have also been able to work with other young people from other different regions of the country other than the 4 counties that I have mentioned. I know we work with people in Busia, and the reason we have been so in partnership or collaborations with feeds. So basically, why I am here to discuss this topic actually is because of the young people that I work with. And maybe just to say that when we talk about mental health, we are basically not saying that people are not physically sick. And so when we define health is a state of well-being, physically, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, and not merely the absence of an illness or a disease. And so many times people want to confuse mental health for only a specific thing. But I know from the overview, you have also learned that suicidal attempts or suicide is part of mental health. And the reason we are here to discuss this today. So I came in, I think, when the first speaker was mentioning some of the red flags. So I just want to say that among the young people that I work with, I have seen a lot of them exhibiting some of the signs, or rather the red flags of suicidal attempts. And maybe just to add on what has already been mentioned is that many times when people are in this state, they tend to withdraw. That is, there's this feeling of loneliness. They don't just want to participate or to be part of other people or the community or the household where they live. They want to be alone. People tend to be alone and want to hide. If they have, like, say, a household that has a setup where people have different bedrooms, like siblings, someone will want to be alone in their room so that they're not interacting with others. And most of the time, that is when it happens that they commit suicide without having been noticed, because maybe someone was just alone most of the time. And in some cases where, like, say, for the people that I have worked with, someone will say, my mother lives, like, say, a single mother who has 2 children, a son and a daughter. So I'm taking a slum, like someone who is in Manyata in Kisumu, and this woman maybe say is just a business lady in the market, and they're maybe selling fish. They have to wake up very early in the morning, go to the lake or by the lake to get fish that they will sell during the day. And so most of the days are spent, these women will spend outside the home. And it happens that they left the children in the house. And so among the 2, sometimes the girl will hide, would be just in the room alone. I remember this scenario where this girl was all alone in the room, and she said she was not talking to the brother because the brother was equally busy. You know, during Corona, the brother will leave the house and go to play with other boys. So the girl will hide, stay alone in the home. The mother has gone to the market. And for her condition state, actually, it was because she had had they had been engaged sexually with the brother, the girl and the brother. And so she was in this state whereby she's pregnant by the brother. She doesn't know what to do with her pregnancy. She doesn't know how to tell the mother, who is never home because she returns home very late. And because they were all alone in the house, the 2 of them, that's how they ended up having sex amongst themselves. And it was a very devastating situation, actually, even a story to hear. I'm sure you are listening to this and you're wondering, how can this happen? But I can assure you, this is a story that I was told when I went to Kisumu. And so the girl was at that verge of committing suicide. She thought, I think the best thing is not just for anyone to know that I was pregnant, because she was a Form 1 student, and not even for anyone to know that it was from the brother. So I'm bringing this example so that you understand, when we talk of mental health, it's not just when you see the mad men and women in the market. But I'm talking of a situation where you see a schoolgirl who has a stressful psychological and mental problem that she cannot talk about, or she doesn't even know who to share with, you know. So she will tend to be alone in the home. And she says every time, she will know the mother was about to come back, she will go and sleep. And the mother, because she's tired, she's been in the market the whole day, she will return home, get a shower, eat, and sleep. And the next morning, she will be out to get fish, to go fry the fish, and then sell in the market. So that kind of withdrawal, or people feeling wanting to be alone, is what I was trying to demonstrate. And sometimes, or many times again, people who are thinking of committing suicide will also tend to be very anxious. They don't know what to do. I mean, someone is just, they are there, like they're not there, but they're too anxious. They don't concentrate. They will want to do things, but they don't know how to do that. But the thing is that they don't get to concentrate on one thing. They will be maybe sweaty most of the time, with some tremors. They get to be so agitated. In some cases, they do not want to be talked to. They do not want to be listened to. And they do not want to participate in anything. In other cases, people tend to sleep a lot. I know that has also been mentioned, but then they sleep because they're hiding away. So they'd rather be in the bed, you know. You're sleeping because you do not want people to talk to you. You feel you're alone, so you should rather be asleep. They tend to have dramatic mood changes. You don't know, you cannot predict what they will look like the next moment, whether they will contribute to your conversation, or how they will take your topic of discussion, or your sentence, or any feedback, or anything that you're talking to them. You don't know whether they will eat the next moment. You even don't know whether they will participate or go to school and such like. Then the feeling of hopelessness. Someone feel like, I don't think I need to live. I don't think life is worth living it anymore. So that feeling, because they think they'd rather take away their lives and not be living on earth, you know. And in some cases, people want to take revenge. Someone has annoyed you, or some of the things that happened really are maybe really bad things. And as we said earlier, I'm sure from the introduction, is that the world is full of troubles or challenges that sometimes you may think of broken relationships, separations, divorce, troubled parenting, like in a single parenthood, you know, loss of businesses, death of a loved one. In some cases, when people go through surgeries that they lose parts of their bodies, like say when someone has to go through a procedure in the theater like that, maybe they will lose a limb. You start thinking how you will live with disability that you were not born with. Maybe it was as a result of an accident or as a result of an illness. Those kind of people. I remember during my time as a practitioner in the hospital or in healthcare, when patients are being prepared for surgery, one of the things that they have to go through is counseling on how, especially surgeries that will involve a removal of a part of their body. So they have to go through counseling and reassurance of how they will live without that particular part of their body, because that is one of the things that really is traumatizing. You have been well for the past 20, 30 years, but then you have to do without your breast. For women, someone would be thinking, if they were young ladies and they have to go through a mastectomy, that is removal of one breast or a breast, they're thinking, how will I even live without one of my breasts? You know, it's abnormal. I look abnormal. How will I breastfeed? I'm not sure someone will love me if they are not married, you know. I remember there are times when young women or young girls, someone will go through, say, a procedure on their ovaries, and the boyfriend had to run away because he was told if someone has been taken through theater to remove their ovary, they'll never give birth. And so who wants to marry a girl that will never give birth in the African setup, you know? So those kind of things, that individual will never be the same again. So they go through those kind of situations and rather mental instability, and sometimes they think, I'd rather just die than live without this part of my body. So that kind of feeling. In some cases, some individuals take to a lot of alcohol or other drugs. They want to, I don't know where this thing came from, that if you take too much, you try to forget your problems. And I'm sure if you are an African and you live in the planet where I live, you have seen many people tend to resort to drunkenness because they are going through a mental issue. Sometimes people just talk to themselves. I have seen people who, because of stress, they are walking while talking to themselves, like so loudly that even if they pass you, you'll hear them talking and you're like, is he talking or she talking to me or to someone else? So those kind of feelings are what we call the red flags. Sometimes you may be in a classroom setup and you'll see your neighbor or see someone who is going through those kind of, who is exhibiting those kind of symptoms. Please know that those are red flags to suicidal thoughts. And so you must also know what to do in that scenario so that you can be helpful to them. And knowing what to do is what we are saying interventions. If someone is going through this and you are a neighbor or a friend, sometimes some of the individuals express, like, I think someone will say, I think I'd rather die than keep living because life is not worth living. And some individual will keep quiet. So if you're next to someone who is saying this, and this is your friend or your neighbor or your sister or brother, please know that somebody is going through suicidal thoughts and that they need help. So one of the first things you can do if you're not a counselor or you have nothing you can offer, the best thing you can do is to refer them to where they can get help. Many times we will not have the remedy, but it's always good to talk to that person. And if they told you, like, I have seen a friend who posted on their Facebook and I reached out to ask or to get to know more about why they were saying life was not worth living. And so the best thing, if you saw something like that, please refer them to where they can get help. If you're in a position where you can offer counseling, you can take this person through the counseling session, helping them understand that the problem they're living today is just for today. I mean, like, there's nothing so hard or difficult to get a solution to. And if they get the right people or the right person, they can get the help that is necessary. But most important is getting to understand why they are going through what they're going through. And it is not just an individual. This is normal. It happens to like 80% of the population go through some of these moments of hopelessness, moments of betrayal, moments of loss. We all go through this. But the most important thing is knowing how to handle each of those depending on the cause or why someone was going through that. If there is, say, a solution, like say, for an example I gave of that girl, young girl, who was feeling suicidal simply because she got pregnant and she was impregnated by her brother. I mean, if I stop to ask today, what will you tell this young girl? Go and die? I'm sure not all, none of us will say go and die. We will want to find a solution to her problem. And of course, maybe the first thing will be get someone who can be supportive to her. If it is that girl, you have to get the mother on board. You have to get maybe a healthcare provider or a counselor to talk to this girl. If it is someone who is going through loss because maybe their body part has been removed or because they are sick or a terminal illness, then you have to take them through what is required for that particular purpose. For instance, there are people, when they get to know that they have cancer of whichever part of their body, we all know that cancer has no treatment. But when it comes to cancer, of course, there are interventions before people get to real cancer, before we get to real cancer, like eating properly, avoiding some of the things that can expose us to cancers and all that. But now the moment one is already diagnosed with cancer, what needs to be done? It's helping this individual go through medication, go through counseling, go through what they need to go through to live longer with their condition. In cases of loss of a loved one, they are all Bible verses and every other thing that you can refer to help take these people through counseling, to help them understand that death is a natural thing that we all will go through, except that our different timings are different. And so we must accept why God does that and all that kind of a thing. If it is suicidal thoughts because of a betrayal or someone has lost or has divorced somebody, there are all those things that you can do to support them through. So key is usually support. If individuals have good support systems when they're going through most of the livelihood issues, people can be able to live longer and to overcome those stressful moments or those moments that can lead to suicidal thoughts. And in scenarios where people have no sleep, there are medicines that can be provided to help them find some sleep. If there's need to help people go through rehabilitation, to stop drinking, there are also those interventions. So there will be different interventions to different scenarios. If it is someone who has lost maybe, say, a part of their body, a limb, there will be artificial limbs or something that can always be done to support them. But the most important support that people need is the support from within their environment, the family, the community, so that we can support these people go through the situation they're going through. I hope I'm not taking so much time. And as I was doing that, I know I've been giving examples, so maybe I'll just add on one or two more examples of what has happened before. I vividly remember this scenario of a young girl who had to lose her uterus. That was during training in my basic training in some institution in this country. And I remember us nursing a girl who had lost her uterus. And the girl was in real depression. She was about 15 years old. So you can imagine at 15 years, if this girl has to get married, and how we understand and know our African culture and the men in Africa who value children. So without the uterus means that she can always get a baby, yes, but not necessarily, not through the normal way of carrying a baby in her uterus. And so it was really depressing to her that she lost her uterus. And also just the fact that she has to explain to the world, I mean, not to the world, but to people who will want to know what happened. So also explaining why she had to go through that procedure was a big thing. And so I remember going to her bed at night, I think on her third day post-procedure, post-operation, knowing so well that something had happened, and she had actually been taken through the process, understanding what happened to her. So that was real trauma to this girl. And so, of course, I took her through the spiritual counseling, emotional support, and all that. And so it is never just about people. When we talk about mental health and mental stressors, I mean, the different stressors that cause mental disturbances, people always narrow-minded in terms of what causes that. But it can be this broad if you look at the different perspectives and some of the real causes of suicidal thoughts. It's a lot. It can be a lot. The world we live in has a lot of things. So I'm just hoping that as we leave this session, we are going open-minded. We will see people differently. Sometimes when we are on the roads, we always say you're the only sober person, meaning that the other driver is not sober on the road because of the different issues they may be going through. So it is really important that we understand people from different, from those perspectives or angles, so that we can be able to support them when we encounter them. I think I stop there and leave room for questions when that time comes. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my experiences with you.
Thank you so much, Melvin, for sharing those lived experiences and trying to weave them with interventions. As she has been sharing, I've been wondering aloud. I don't know what we may say, but is it true that at times we lose our dear friends, our dear parents with the terminal illness through suicide without us knowing? That, for example, someone who is stage 4 cancer and has been bedridden for long can decide to overdose himself or herself so that she can or he can rest early. And we may not know that this has happened. I was just trying to think aloud because I know it happens. So it's important that we just be keen, because terminal illness, at times people may die of suicide because of that. I've also been wondering a lot and thinking aloud. Some people go venting on the social media, and therefore we post at times on our WhatsApp status or maybe on Facebook. And if you go through, you see some red flags. So is it possible that we can again go for these people? Because it's not just a matter of maybe seeing the red flags from people we are interacting with, people we are working with, or people we are working with, or maybe people we are staying with. But at times, these red flags can be seen on other people's WhatsApp status, or maybe on Facebook pages. So it's also keen that we go for these people as much as it's coming from their WhatsApp status. Part of interventions, I think it's also important just to be close to these people who are having suicidal ideation. Let us be close to them. Let us be warm. Let us not leave them alone in the house, in their rooms. Let us not leave them in their at home alone. Let someone be there when they are going through those red flags. Let us always remember to remove the stressors around them, the stressors that might be triggering the suicidal ideation. Let us also try to remove what may prompt them to take their life, like ensuring there are no ropes around, there are no headscarves, there are no poisonous drugs around them, or even the prescription drugs. Let's keep them away where they cannot reach, because they can also be a trigger. Let us help them to confide in trusted people. Let us encourage them to talk out, to vent out in whichever way they can. Then let us also help them in terms of positive coping mechanism. Let us enlarge their horizon by giving them positive coping mechanism. So thank you so much, Maureen. Those with questions, kindly post on the wall. We shall be having a session of engagement in terms of questions and answers towards the end of this session. Allow me to bring on board the key speaker. Now, the key speaker is all the way from United States of America. He is a founder of the Speak Easy method. And he does more of journaling. So thank you so much for taking time to be with us in this webinar. Thank you so much for accepting to speak to us. I want to believe that we are excited to increase our networks with people from the United States of America. And it will be a good way of learning and sharing experiences of probably what happens in US and what happens in Kenya in terms of suicide prevention, in terms of changing the narrative. So our speaker will be talking to us about changing the narrative on suicide, which is the key theme of this year. Changing the narrative on suicide. And because he does more in journaling, so he'll do that as he talks about journaling and other methods. So allow me to bring on board Greg Gonzalez. Greg, please feel most welcome.
Ephraim, thank you so much for the warm welcome. And hello, everybody. It's such a joy to be with you from Denver, Colorado in the United States. I'd like to just send a huge amount of gratitude to both Melvin and Evans. Your talks were incredibly informative and heartfelt. And I always enjoy these discussions because I feel there's so much to learn from others. And I think that when we really sit and allow ourselves to understand and to listen and to really take in the information, that there's so much that we can take away that maybe we thought we knew, but it just makes us a little bit more wiser and a little bit more clear. And especially on the topic of suicide prevention, I think that having experts like we've had have just been so valuable. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all. Rose, thank you so much for the invite. Rose and I have been friends for a while now on Facebook. She's been following my work. And when she asked me to join, I didn't hesitate. So it is absolutely a pleasure to be here. A little bit about myself. I am the founder of the Speakeasy Method. Prior to that, I spent a couple of decades in the wellness field, primarily as a massage therapist. So I like to say to people that I've been connected to people for most of my life. And then prior to that was in a lot of guest service and customer service roles where, just being connected to people and being able to read people through their facial expressions, body language, but also just through conversation has really been at the forefront of who I am. And I love to connect with people. I love to learn from people and to ask people questions. And so I believe that one of my superpowers when I was born, and I really nurtured it when I was a young kid, was to ask a lot of questions. And I was one of those annoying kids who was always, why this? Why that? How does this work? And I think that just has continued on as I've learned to just study people and get to meet different people. But along the way, when you ask the right questions and you get people to share and be open and honest, they really do reveal so much about themselves that we don't know or we didn't know. And so part of what I hope that we can all take away from this conversation, and we're going to talk about journaling and why I feel that is just such an essential tool, especially in the area of prevention, since we're talking about suicide prevention. To me, it's about the prevention of just allowing our mental health to take us to a state where we feel we're just kind of at a no end point. And so for nothing else, I'd love to give you some tools, some strategies, and some exercises that you could use immediately starting today, but also to just look upon yourselves and one another with a different lens and a different set of eyes to understand that at any moment of any day, we just don't know what anyone is going through. I encounter people who at the grocery store may seem kind of angry and sad, and they might even snap, which I've seen. And I think that when it comes to that, it's easy to judge. It's easy to say, oh, stay away from them. They're a bad person. Or, we get into conflict sometimes with people. If we can learn to just not place judgment, but just to be a little bit more curious and to just ask, maybe they're going through something, what is happening in their life that is causing that smile to disappear and for them to act the way they do. So I really hope that from our talk today, that our awareness of ourselves and each other is just raised a little bit more. And we can just, again, put a more mindful approach to how we connect to ourselves and to others. So that's a little precursor to that. My work within Speakeasy really was developed and designed around questions. And I have just believed from the moment I started this work that questions are the answer. And I know that sounds kind of rhetorical, but it really is true that when we ask the right questions of ourselves and for others, we really do get to a deeper understanding of the human condition, of feelings and emotions and thoughts and actions that really can be the foundation of where our lives are going. Three of my favorite questions that I ask people is, where have you been? Where are you now? And where are you going? Be a gateway into just human understanding, peace and harmony with each other, because we all are working towards and are wanting the same things in life. We just are all going about it in different ways. So my talk today is really going to focus on this idea of how to utilize the tool of journaling and asking questions as a means of prevention. And along the way, I hope to teach you the Speakeasy method. So you're all going to get kind of a crash course in how to utilize the tool that I use in my work when it comes to storytelling and helping people write books and people sharing their story. I'm going to give you the exact same tools that I use, so this way you can apply it in your day-to-day. So before we get into that, I'd like to, this was totally not expected, but, and this happens with me sometimes as I'm preparing for a talk. I have this epiphany in the morning when I go for a morning walk. And we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of a morning practice. That I get these downloads and these ideas as in thinking about this talk and thinking about you all. And I decided I need to look back at some of my old journals, like some of the journals that I started maybe 6.5 years ago when Speakeasy was just getting started. And I'll be honest with you all, I was a horrible journaler. I actually did not enjoy the process of it. It was hard. It wasn't something that I did naturally, and I saw it as work. And so I went through an early journal of mine, and I actually did a writing exercise where I asked myself the question, And so I'd like to share with a couple people who I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and I'm just really inspired by their philosophy on practice. And these are two NBA superstars. One is no longer with us. It's Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, who most people know. And these two men really put such an emphasis on this idea of practice. Kobe's approach was one that he talked about going on these long road trips, and they would play back-to-back games on the road, very exhausting, and then they have to come back home for a practice session before going into a really big home game on the weekend. And he explained how after a long road trip that he was tired, the players were tired, and some of them would show up at practice just very like, oh, I don't want to be here. They're just kind of going through the motions, being very lazy. And he would get in their faces and say, look, this is our time to perfect our craft. This is what makes the difference between us going to the playoffs, moving towards a championship and winning a championship and not. And so he would call out certain players who would not take practice seriously. And he said that it was that dedication to practice that made his run with the LA Lakers so successful. Also on the side with that is Michael Jordan, who when he talked about practice, there's so many films of him taking that last second shot and winning the championship for the Chicago Bulls. And there's one in particular that he talked about where they were playing the Utah Jazz, and it was a game 7 and he hit the basket and just everybody went crazy. But when Jordan scored, he kind of had this look on his face like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. And what he explained is that in practice, he goes full tilt, 100% as if it's game 7 in practice. And he practiced that shot over and over and over again to where when it came to game time, there was no question that he was going to make that basket because he's already played that game. He'd already been practicing to get ready for the critical moment where that shot needed to be taken. And so after hearing that, I started thinking to myself, like this idea of practice to prepare for the game. I would argue that we are all living in the game. You know, for some of us, it's game 7. It's that critical moment of make or break. It's that fork in the road. It's that making a decision, could be changing a career, could be going through some mental and physical stress. There could be so many things happening to us that we feel this is our pivotal moment that we need to show up at our best to make the right decisions, to not fall. And in some horrible cases, we feel like there's no other way out than to leave. And that's where I feel like with some people with suicide, they feel like they've got no other choice. And I say, by establishing a daily practice for yourself, to prepare yourself for those moments in life that we know are going to come. We know we're going to have those moments where we're going to be tested. But if we're doing the work, if we are invested in ourselves and committed to ourselves, when those moments show up, we can handle them with grace, with patience, with peace. Yes, we're going to have those moments where we're angry and we're stressed and we're going to be tested, but we can stop and reflect and understand why, and then respond versus react. So that's really, to me, what this whole idea of practice. What are we doing each day to prepare for game time, to prepare for those critical moments in our life? So I really would like to now kind of transition into moving from how do we establish that into our practice, into something that is tangible for us to utilize each and every day. Before we get into the tool of the speakeasy method, which I will teach with you, I wanted to share, I love this idea that happiness is a choice, and I do believe that. And I wonder if you all feel the same way. But happiness as a whole, I would say on a global scale, has really been taking a hit. And I think that some of our speakers have addressed this earlier, of just how our levels of happiness and joy has really been waning, I think. And we can point to so many different causes. There's climate, there's wars globally, conflict, There's just a lot of economic strife, political, governmental issues, just societally. Obviously, with the internet and with social media, that can cause a lot of unhappiness, I think, within people globally. So there is a study that's done every year where they look at the globe as a whole, and they've got 148 countries that they look at to rate who are in the top countries of happiness, who is living a life of happiness in their countries. And consistently, it's always the Northern European, Danish countries like Norway and Iceland and Denmark, places like that. Happiness seems to be pretty much at a constant. The United States has been at a drastic decline. We are now out of the top 10. I actually think we are now 18th, 19th in the world, and moving backwards. And coincidentally, Kenya is also on a decline. The most latest study shows that they are 114th out of 148 globally. And again, I think we could spend a lot of time talking about the reasons why, but I really would like to focus more on, and I have an exercise that I'm going to share with you that really get into the obstacles to happiness. There are so many things that I think that we can pinpoint in our own lives, but also globally, as ways that, these are the things that may get in the way. Things such as fear, or thoughts of I'll be happy when, could be comparison and accountability, could be setting expectations that aren't met, negative thoughts, not living in the present moment. So there's a lot of those that I've shared in a handout that I'll be sharing with you all after we're done today. But I think once we've determined what the obstacles are, there is a way forward. And that leads us into the practice and using what I call the speakeasy method. So the origin of the speakeasy method really came about by accident. And it really came from one of my struggle days of trying to journal and looking at a blank page. And I actually had a question written at the top of the page. It was, what does love feel like? I vividly remember this. The question was, what does love feel like? And you would think most people have a really good answer. I thought I would, but I couldn't get it on paper. I started just scribbling a few things down and it felt forced and it just wasn't natural. And I kind of got angry with myself because I can't express myself with this question of what does love feel like? Well, then it dawned on me one day as I was struggling, well, I wonder how other people would answer this question. So I started reaching out to people. I started reaching out to some close colleagues and friends. And I had about a dozen questions that I had written down. And I said, I'd like to ask you some questions and see what comes up for you. And so it turned into this pseudo interview session with people. But what came about from it was so revelatory, so eye-opening, that I got to sit back and just really just almost be this audience member to this performance of someone sharing their heart, their soul, their mind with me, that for them, took them on a self-discovery journey. Their emotions went through just from hilarity to tears, but not tears of sadness, but tears of just, being able to really reflect and to connect with someone and answering these questions that were so meaningful and thoughtful. And it was transformative. It was an experience that I thought to myself, this is what I want to do. I want to help people tell the story of themselves through asking powerful questions. And so that was really how the speakeasy method came to be. It was really about strengthening human connection, but it also was so much about mental cognition, mental immunity, and just how our brains think about ourselves, the things that we process each day. When a good question is answered, our brains suddenly go into hyperdrive. It's like they're in turbo mode and they want to answer when we are feeling connected. And so to me, the speakeasy method, there's a formula to it that I'll share with you, but it really is about connection. And that connection leads to so many wonderful places. So What I'd like to do is walk you all through the speakeasy method step by step. If you have a notebook, this is all going to be in your handout, but feel free to take notes. But when I think about the speakeasy method, it really comes down to this. The formula is AI plus the 4 C's. And so AI is not what you think it is. It's not artificial intelligence. There's nothing artificial about this at all. AI is attention and intention. So I'd like you for a moment to, when I say intention, I want you to take your right hand and just place it on your forehead. Just put your intention or put your thoughts into your mind. This is attention, the things we think about, okay? Intention, you take your hand and move it to your heart. And that is, what does it feel like when you're thinking of that thought, okay? So if I were to say to you that question of what are you most grateful for that I asked you at the beginning, you're thinking of the question, right? Your head is on overdrive, your brain is acting, thinking, what am I grateful for? But then when you bring that thought, that image, that person, that moment up, what does it then feel like to you, okay? So you could have an example of, I'm grateful for my family. You know, my family is just so supportive, so loving, they're always there. That could be the thought that comes to me, but what does my family feel like to me? So that is AI. AI is when you connect the head and the heart to anything that you do. It could be washing dishes, it could be having a conversation with a close friend, it could be eating, it could be going for a walk. If we take a mindful approach to the things we do with our thoughts and feelings to it, it will take that experience to a new level. To me, that is the foundation of the speakeasy method. So it starts with AI, okay? Then the first C is compassion. Now, what do I mean by compassion? Compassion to me is a safe, sacred, loving, empathetic space that we create for ourselves and for others. And so when I think about being compassionate, it's that openness, that safe space. It's that holding of space for yourself and someone else to step in with you or to step into it with yourself to create this area of compassionate empathy. So that is what the first C is, it's compassion. Second C, we move into curiosity. This is where the question comes in. And I'm not talking just any question. I mean a question that tells a story. This is a question like, what does love feel like? How do you define joy? What do I really want in my life? Things that aren't just a yes or no answer. You need to think about questions that can be expressed fully. And maybe there's even more questions that come from the answers. So curiosity, establishing this feeling of being curious is such a key element to journaling and to self-expression. Asking yourself the questions that need to be asked and answering them fully, which moves us into the third C, which is conversation. So we all have conversations with ourselves every minute of every day. That internal voice, sometimes it's like, oh, I shouldn't do that. Or do I really want to eat that? No, I really shouldn't. Or is this person right for me? You know, these are conversations we may not think we're having, but we are. Having a conversation inside, kind of like when I ask the questions of what am I grateful for? Why am I here? What do I want? You all were kind of having this internal conversation. But that conversation can also be put onto paper. That is the beauty of journaling, is you are literally having a conversation with yourself. Okay? So you start with that safe space, you move into asking the question, then you have the conversation from that question. Okay? And that conversation can be expansive. You could find things come up that you had no idea was inside. And that's okay. Just allow yourself the freedom and the genuine expressiveness to bring that to life. Okay? Then that leads us to the fourth C, which is clarity. Clarity to me is wisdom, it's understanding, it's just a feeling of just inner knowing that when I go back and reflect on some of my writings, it's very insightful. Like I kind of surprise myself at times. And I surprise myself when I'm in the act of journaling too, that it's like, I didn't know I had that in me. I didn't know I felt that way, you know, especially on a day where I'm having some challenges. When I ask myself the right question, when I've created that space for myself, ask the question of what's wrong, why am I angry, why am I stressed, and I allow that conversation to come forward, what I take away from that experience is one of just, I didn't know that, and I'm more clear, and now I can actually be more responsive than reactive to it. So this might sound like a long, tedious process, but it's really not. And I think that as you practice using the speakeasy method within your own journaling practice, it becomes effortless. It becomes easy. It becomes something that you're not really thinking about. Okay, am I doing the right C first? Is it this one, then this one? It has a natural flow and direction to it that as you do it, you're going to find it's going to be much easier. Your writing is going to be more expansive. You're going to feel so much more lighter by getting this energy out and actually feeling productive with it. So that is just a simple way for you to utilize the speakeasy method for yourself. There are 4 ways, honestly, to use this method when you are dealing with a question and when you're dealing with emotions and thoughts and feelings that you might be struggling with. So let me kind of go through those 4 ways. The first one we all actually did already, and this is in silent reflection. So when I ask the questions at the beginning, what am I grateful for? Why am I here? What do I want? You are still using the method when you're just sitting quietly, giving yourself that safe space, ask the question, having that internal conversation to reach clarity and understanding. So you can do it silently. So that's the first way. The second way is by opening a notebook or journal, writing the question at the top of your page, and then allowing yourself to answer. So written answers is the second way. The third way, some people are just better speakers. And so the beauty of technology, if you are walking around with a phone or a tablet or you have your computer, there's so many ways to record yourself, to ask yourself the question and answer it vocally. Create an audio journal. It doesn't have to be written. I will go on a walk and have a download and a thought and a question, and I don't have my journal with me. I can't write as I'm walking, but I can certainly answer it while I'm walking. And sometimes my answers vocally are more expansive than if I actually were to sit down to write. So the third way is to vocally answer the questions. And then the fourth way, which is probably, it just takes connection to another level, is bring somebody into the mix with you. Bring a trusted friend or a loved one. Share these questions with others. See what their answers are that you might be struggling with, and have a true conversation around a handful of questions that could really take your connection to a new level. I have found that when I was doing those practice sessions at the beginning of my work, that the transformation within people and myself was remarkable. Each time I ask somebody a question, I learn something new about them. I learn something new about just the human condition, why we think the way we do, why people believe what they believe, what people are going through at any moment of the day.